Have you ever thought about how your web application remembers you after you log in, and more importantly, how it keeps that memory secure from malicious actors? It is a fundamental challenge in web security, ensuring that once you are authenticated, your ongoing session remains protected. One of the most effective techniques to achieve this is called session identification rotation. At its core, session identification rotation is the practice of periodically replacing a user's session identification token with a new one without interrupting their active session. Think of it like changing the lock on a door while someone is still inside, but they automatically get a new key without even noticing. The primary reason for implementing session identification rotation is to significantly enhance the security of user sessions against various types of attacks. It directly addresses a common vulnerability known as session fixation. In a session fixation attack, an attacker tricks a user into logging in with a session identification that the attacker already knows. If the application does not rotate the session identification upon successful login, the attacker can then use that known identification to impersonate the legitimate user, even after they have authenticated. By generating a fresh, unpredictable session identification after a successful login, the old, potentially compromised identification becomes invalid, effectively closing the window for such an attack. Furthermore, rotating session identifications also helps to mitigate the impact of session hijacking, an attack where an attacker steals an active session identification. Even if an attacker manages to obtain a session identification through methods like cross-site scripting or network sniffing, the regular rotation limits the duration for which that stolen identification remains valid. This reduces the time an attacker has to exploit the session, making such attacks less appealing and harder to execute successfully. It adds an additional layer of defense, making persistent, unauthorized access much more difficult for attackers to maintain. This approach creates a moving target for anyone attempting to compromise a user's authenticated state. In practice, session identification rotation typically occurs at critical security junctures within an application. The most common trigger is immediately after a user successfully logs in, ensuring that any pre-login session identification is invalidated and replaced. Another important instance is during privilege escalation, such as when a user elevates their permissions, perhaps by entering a password to access sensitive settings. Each of these moments presents an opportunity to renew the session identification, thereby resetting the attack window for potential attackers and reinforcing the integrity of the user's current authenticated state. This technique can be thought of as akin to a concept in cryptography known as rolling keys, where cryptographic keys are regularly changed to limit the amount of data encrypted with any single key. In session management, this translates into continually refreshing the token that represents a user's authenticated state. It is not just about replacing a string of characters. It is about fundamentally renewing the trust relationship between the user and the server at key moments, proactively defending against common and sophisticated web vulnerabilities. Implementing session identification rotation is a cornerstone of robust web application security. It actively works to protect user accounts from exploitation by invalidating potentially compromised session identifications and reducing the window of opportunity for attackers. By embracing this practice, developers can build more resilient systems, fostering greater confidence in the security of user interactions and data.
If this helps you code smarter, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.